So you have to get into your passion for the right reasons, and the right reasons are something that you truly believe in, right? Something that you were meant to do and you've realized it. And second, your absolute belief that you will put in your heart and soul into it, everything that you've got, including the risk of losing everything, to be successful. I think eventually if you do those two things, you will make it. Some will make it faster, some will make it later, but you will make it big.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of our podcast series, Second Innings. I am Atul Nath, and with me, my co-host and co-podcaster is Suman Ghose. We are going to be your hosts this afternoon, and with us we have really special guests. But before that, while each of our work journeys till now has been quite different, looking ahead, we are finding that our paths can be far more aligned, and we're getting more and more interested in things like purpose, passion, and joy, especially from our work lives. As we have been speaking to more and more people about these subjects, we're finding it pretty clear that this topic is resonating with a lot of our friends, a lot of our acquaintances, a lot of people we speak to. So in this podcast series, what we do is we find people who've made a successful transition to their second innings and have enjoyed that journey, savored the journey, and learned a lot from the journey. And these are the experiences they've had, and they'd like to share it with all of you out there, so that you can be making the same transition as well. Like I said earlier, we have a very special guest, Anshu Mor, with us today. After spending 18 years in corporate life, his last assignment was that of being head of Xbox India at Microsoft, which in itself would have been a very exciting assignment. But Anshu Mor decided to quit Microsoft in 2016, and he became something even more exciting, which is a stand-up comedian. In his first year, he was recognized as the rising star of stand-up comedy by the Times Group, no less. He is now one of the leading comedians in India, having performed over 2,000 shows in India and outside the country, and has got over 50 million views on YouTube. Welcome to our podcast show, Anshu, and thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that introduction. It is an absolute pleasure, Atul, to doing this with you again. We've worked before as partners at Microsoft, and this is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. And all the things that I've said, the introduction came from me only, by the way. And I was just wondering, while you were saying it, I was like, मैं 2000 shows का 5000 भी बोल देता तो कौन check करने वाला था?
I was just going to say
I should have done that.
I was just going to say that don't say thanks for the introduction because it was yours. So, don't thank me for it. But anyway, yes,
but
we've known
that was a big number. It got me impressed. And what impressed me more was the 50 million. So yeah, thank you so much for being on the show.
That I'm very proud of, actually. Yeah.
And that can be verified. So it's even more important as a number.
That can be verified.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is...
thank you so much. This is very exciting.
Yes, I hope we can create some exciting stories for people to hear and, share with you your experiences because it's been an exciting... Having watched your transition from fairly close from, knowing you at Microsoft for a few years before you decided to take this jump into what I thought then was oblivion, though it's proven to be not oblivion and you've landed on your feet. So that's really good. But I will say that, I'd love to hear a little bit about, your upbringing so that, the audience can know a little bit about where you're kind of coming from, your origin story, how you grew up and so on and so forth. So let's start over there.
Yeah. Contrary to what the industry believes, and I'll tell you why I said that. When I joined, before I go into the origin story now, when I joined the stand-up industry, you're at the lowest rung of the industry, right? You're just a guy who's never been on stage. So anybody who's been on stage even 5 more times than you is a way better off comedian than you are at that point of time. So I used to go to these open mics, just test and ask for spots and all these things, and beg and plead कि मुझे 5 minute दे दो. And the thing was, I would go in my Audi, which I bought with Microsoft money out there, and then beg for these spots. And all of these comedians would look at me and say, "Aapko ye karne ki zarurat hai nahi. You should just go back, sit and relax. You don't need to work anymore." Yeah. So they all believed that this was generational wealth that I used to. They used to believe that generational wealth is what I used to carry, but really came from a very, very, very humble background. Both my parents were, teachers. My dad used to teach in a college. My mom used to teach in a school, and we stayed in Delhi in a very, very small house. It was actually really a two-room house. That's where we used to stay. And all I've seen during my entire life was just parents working hard, and then growing up in steps. So we got the first TV. We got things. We got it just later than everybody else. You know how it is around you. You would see people with these fancy things. What we used to think was fancy, we just used to get it later. So we got our first television slightly later. We got our first telephone slightly later. First color television slightly later. First scooter, car. Those kind of things. So grew up in an environment where where it was very evident that good things can happen. They may take time, but as long as you're willing to put in effort in whatever you're doing, whether it's corporate life or anything else for that matter, good things do happen eventually. And taught me a lot of patience. Home environment was very simple. My dad was a strict one. He was the guy who I used to be very scared of. He was, with his anger and everything. But even then, nobody ever put too much pressure on me. I have an older brother. In fact, even on him, there was not too much of pressure in terms of padhai karo, ye karo, wo karo, those kind of things. We were pretty much given a free hand to do whatever we want, and very stable environment here, which is not good for a comedian, by the way. I've heard of all comedians. They've come from one of the parents was an issue or very dark backgrounds, and they have stories and all which they now use on stage. And I'm like, yeah, I came from a very decent background. Mere ghar mein to koi problem hi nahi tha. Everything was fine. Everybody was loving each other. Got full attention from parents. Had good friends around to play. But yeah, came from there. But it was, we were middle class. I like to say lower middle class. Every time I say that, my mom objects. She was like, क्या नहीं दिया तुम्हें हमने जो तुम lower middle class बोल रहे हो. But yeah, like we grew up in steps. So धीरे धीरे करके we were going into a normal school in Delhi, and it was steps. I think that was, whenever I think of my childhood, it was just this, dhire dhire, like improvement in life. Whether it was your education or even when I started working, right? It was, the first job was not so great. The second was okay. The third was slightly better, and eventually landed in Microsoft. So it was that journey, which was fairly stable in my view, to do this in steps. Nothing came easy. Nothing came suddenly. And had a great corporate life for 18 years. Used to love working. So before people make any assumptions that I was a disgruntled employee, I wasn't. I used to really enjoy my work. And then 2016, I went and saw this movie called Tamasha, which truly inspired me. And I still blame Imtiaz Ali for everything that is happening in my life right now. But yeah, I saw Tamasha on a Sunday night in 2016. And Monday morning, I went to Microsoft office and resigned. I said, this is what I need to do in my life, is to get up on stage, which was always my passion through school and college. And even even in corporate life, I used to get up on stage to do things. And I just took a decision. It was just one of those things. People don't believe it, but that's how it played out. Sunday night movie, Monday morning resigned. And now I'm here, stand-up comedian.
Wow, that's an incredible story. So I'm very intrigued as to what in Tamasha did that trick, right? But this was not even on your mind till then. I mean, it was just that much of an impulsive decision.
No, it was the thing of being on stage, and that being a place where I felt the most at peace and the most happy was a thing I was fully aware of as I was, especially during corporate life. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I have this great company that I work for and great salary and a fantastic job of heading Xbox. You can't really complain about that life. But still, when I'm on stage, even hosting a company meeting or whatever, I feel happier than I do, in any other part of my life. So I knew how important stage was for me at that point of time. I knew how important humor was for me at that point of time, because all through my life I've used humor as a tool to get out of situations, whether it was getting out of an angry parent, or getting out of having gotten bad marks, whatever it was, right? For me, humor was a defense mechanism. It's like, use humor, ease the tension, get things done. And I generally used to just like the idea of people laughing. So all of this was there, but I had not, honestly, till that point of time, I had not thought that, hey, let me just quit everything and jump into something called a stand-up comedy, because stand-up comedy was very, very nascent, only 3-4 years in India, 5 years actually till that time, and none of the stand-up comedians had made it big, or there was not a lot of noise around comedians. I had no idea what the job entailed. I didn't know at that time how to become a comedian, how much money do they make, none of it. So, I know a lot of your listeners are very mature people and they'll be like, ye aadmi pagal hai. But I took a decision to jump into it without knowing anything about the field. I didn't even know what success meant in this field, like, financially. So, but it was just this thought saying, hey, done enough of corporate life, seen a lot, seen the best. And that is not how I want to go out in life, because I felt it was, you would, I mean, I don't want to diss people who do corporate life. People enjoy, people have passions in their life and they work for it. But I felt that I would leave no legacy except for, great quarters and doing your numbers and, probably building a team or whatever. There was no bigger legacy that I'm going to leave behind after working all my life. And I felt that to make a difference, I need to be on stage holding a mic.
We were talking about this the other day as well, Anshu, and I'd like to share this with the audience that, I distinctly remember one particular event that we were doing, Candid was doing for Microsoft many years ago. I'm talking about probably 2013 or 14, maybe 14, 15, a couple of year or two before you took the plunge. And I remember you went on stage as the MC for the event.
Yeah.
And one of my colleagues told me that, and I was like, who's the MC for the event today? And my colleague told me, Anshu's going to be doing it. And I was like, why would Anshu do it? I mean, something wrong with him? Why would he want to do it? And and you went on stage and you were good. I mean, it sounds stupid for me to say it now because you've proven that you were good on stage. But at that time, it was not a given. And it's what the story you've told just now. I just want to corroborate that it was something that was clearly in your blood, even when you were doing the quarters and doing the numbers and worrying about the sales numbers and the marketing budgets and all of that. It was something that was very close to your heart. And that in itself is, but having said that, it's not easy to convert that into something beyond simply I must say that there are a lot of our clients who do this, right? They will get on stage and do it once, do it twice kind of thing. It's not uncommon for corporate people. I'm sure you've also seen that in corporate, especially when you go for some corporate events and there'll be that one guy who wants to stand on stage with you and take your mic. So that's always so there are people who do it, but to then convert that into your primary vocation, your passion, your way in life is absolutely incredible, and it's commendable, and it's especially since you didn't know what comedians do in terms of.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I think everybody. I'll try to sound philosophical and intelligent out here, but everybody in their life now, at some point of time, they figure out their purpose of existence, and some are lucky if they do it in their 20s, some do it in their 30s. For me, it happened mid-40s, literally. But when it hits you, then logic goes out of the window. The whole idea at our age, imagine somebody in their mid-40s with son in 10th class about to go into college in 2 years, and you're leading a certain lifestyle. All of this doesn't sound logical to do. And I would, in fact, now not even suggest that anybody does this kind of a thing. But at that point of time, it just made sense. I was like, yeah, this is so big in my head and like someone was mentioning, right, Tamasha wasn't that much of a movie in terms of changing somebody's life like this, but I was already on the cliff, so to
Mm.
say. Tamasha just kind of pushed me over. Also, the acting wasn't so great, so I was like, मेरे को बॉलीवुड में जाके ये सब ठीक करना ही होगा एक पॉइंट पे आके, so I might as well get into this.
But
But yeah,
you
it was one of those things.
you used the word you used passion, and that's something that always is a recurring theme in our podcast, of course, and a lot of people talk about it.
Yeah.
There are people who've talked to us about passion as something that hits them. There are some people who talk about it as something you need to find. So some people talk about following their passion, people talk about finding their passion. And so, I mean, and you said that, everybody kind of gets hit by their passion. Clearly you have. Is it your experience that other people don't respond to it despite being hit by their passion because they're so used to the straight jacket, straight road? Because I don't see a lot of people jumping ship the way you did.
Great question, yeah. And there are kind of multiple angles to it. One, I would say, my personal belief is that you don't go and find your passion. You somehow inherently know what it is all throughout. It might be dormant for for a long time. It just pops up once in a while, and it is up to you. It's like an idea. When we are writing stuff, when we are writing comedy, I seriously, I and no other comedian knows how the jokes come. They just somehow, in some moment of brilliance or magic, those lines just suddenly appear. All we need to do is just keep at it, and somehow the joke emerges out of somewhere, right? And we don't know what that magic is. And I read this about ideas, and I'm going to relate that to following passion, the question that you asked. The thing with ideas is that everybody gets a zillion ideas, in their life. You will get at least one good idea in your head. अरे ये करते हैं, अरे वो भी कर सकते हैं, or something like this could happen. A lot of time people don't pay attention to it, to that idea, and वो आता है दिमाग में, and then within a second it is gone, and then you forget because you're too busy with your daily life, and कोई call आ गया, कुछ और करना है, and it was like, अरे this is too vague an idea, or this is too bold an idea. ऐसे करके ना वो छोड़ देते हैं. That doesn't mean the idea didn't exist. It did. It came to you. It knocked on your door. It told you, can I come in? And you were like, I'm busy right now, and that idea then goes to somebody else. It's a physical thing. I'm sounding too artistic, but that's how I feel, right? It's a physical thing that just goes off to somebody else. Have you ever kind of heard somebody narrate a story, a fictional story, or seen a movie, and you were like, "Hey, I could have thought about this," or "I did think about it." Those kind of things happen, and that's because the idea might have come to you. You said no, it went to that other person. The same happens with passion. It's everybody knows what they like, what they don't like, where they feel at peace, where they, like the cliched thing of work doesn't feel like work, or what is important in their life. And it comes and it hits you at some point where you're in a bad meeting, or sitting with your colleagues, or thinking, or driving, and then you let it go because it's not important enough yet for you to accept that thought has come and I should do something about it. And that's why I said it could happen to you in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, God knows when. But at some point, it just hits you. I think it's just one of those things. It hits you when you're like, this is it. This is the time I need to do this. That movie Tamasha, coming back from there, and I've said this many times, so I'm going to kind of give a short version. There was hardly any conversation in my house around quitting between that evening and next day morning. I just told my wife I need to do this, and she was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely sure." And she was like, "Just go ahead and do it. Don't think too much about it." And I quit. Right? It could have been a different scenario of having a long conversation, thinking EMIs, this, and son's education. Let's do this after 2 years. Why don't you do it on the side? If I tried doing it on the side, maybe the job would have given me the next promotion, and I would be like, now this is too much money for me to sell my dreams on the side and say, okay, let me do this. Anything could have happened. For me, it was just, and I think that's the greatest thing that happened to me was, it was just that moment, and I said, I'm going to seize this. This is not going anywhere. I am taking a decision, and that's how it came about.
So interesting. When I first heard about your case, I was thinking what made him get into comedy, but now listening to you, it's so clear because I think what you're saying is you always wanted to be on stage, and you also talked of humor, right? And those two align perfectly into comedy.
Yeah.
Um, so, talk to us a little bit about the humor part. You mentioned the last time that humor was always your go-to channel.
Yeah.
Talk a bit about that.
Yeah. I don't know where it. I mean, obviously, I wasn't taking notes as I was growing up to figure out when and where it happened, but part of it was also the upbringing, the people that I moved around with.
I saw what you did there, by the way. You cracked a joke. You used the humor
Sorry.
again to answer that. I said, I saw what you did there again. You cracked a joke to answer that. But anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think my childhood was just very regular childhood with regular kids. None of them were like super rich, super flaunty, those kind of people, just regular kids. So it was just a lot of fun and, sports and stuff like that, good, happy things that we used to do. And there was always jokes around, with my friend circle. Same was, the kind of people that I was with in school and college and all those things. It was always one of those things. Much later in comedy, when I was introspecting of, because I used to say I saw Tamasha and got into comedy, and I knew there was a deeper meaning to it, right? There had to be a deeper reason for me doing this. And I realized that comedy throughout my life was a mechanism for me to get out of difficult situations. My dad, God rest his soul, he was the most honest, wonderful human being that you could meet. He came from a village to Delhi and made up his life like as a teacher. Right till then, he was in a village. So he had kind of come from real ground zero and built whatever he could in his life. Right, so his idea was stay focused. Don't do all these nonsense things. He would never, like I said, never push me कि तुम पढ़ाई करो 99% marks आने चाहिए या whatever आने चाहिए. But he was like, ये फालतू की चीजें मत करो. Like friends were फालतू के लोग, going out was फालतू की चीजें, पिक्चरें देखना was फालतू की चीजें, music was not, these are all wasteful things. Just stay focused and उसमें रहो. And he would get angry, so to deal with his anger, I would use humor a lot. Either I was so embarrassed that I was shouted at, that I would crack a joke with my brother, or I would try to crack a joke with my dad while he was shouting at me, and it would never go down well. But I realized that it's a safer mechanism than to just sit and cry. And that childhood thing of seeing anger and then kind of countering it with humor then got me into every situation in life where, even if it's not anger, if it was a difficult situation for me or for the environment I was in, humor just came in as a mechanism to ease the room, to just calm everybody down and say, hey, it's okay. And I guess that almost got imbibed in my DNA, so to say. And that's why, when Atul was saying that I went up on stage at that event when I was emceeing at Microsoft, I didn't go in with this, hey, I need to say these fancy words and fancy lines in front of fancy people. My first thought was, let me just crack a joke. Let's ease this thing out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and then when, all of these things came together, that, you could actually, there is a profession where you could hold a mic and tell stories and make people laugh. Oh my, that was it.
So the gleam is there in your eyes now.
Yeah.
It's one thing to crack jokes on stage, something else to crack joke in the corporate world, right?
It is. And in fact, as a comedian, it is a shocker, because I genuinely, and I'm saying this absolutely truthfully, I genuinely used to think I am the funniest guy in every room I walk into when I was working at corporate. Because I was cracking these smart one-liners and everybody would laugh, and I would crack a joke about this guy and that guy and the situation we were in, or the business or the partners, something, it was always these lines which were coming off like this. And people around me would laugh even at parties, and I was the guy, people would be having conversation, I would just throw in one line and the room would crack up. And I'm like, boss, this is it. I'm the funniest guy. And then I went up on stage for the first time in front of rank strangers who had no idea who I was, had no context to what I was saying. And then I realized that there is a difference between making friends and colleagues laugh and making an audience laugh. So that was a big shocker when it came to me. I was like, oh my God, this is not what I thought or how easy I thought it would be.
We were talking about this the other day, Anshu, as well, that
Yeah.
humor in the corporate world and how it's not necessarily seen as a great part of everyday life. Now, a lot of our audience, a lot of the people who listen to the podcasts are people who work in corporate situations, and you know, it's. I mean, I love being funny. I love funny people, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people love funny people. But why are corporate situations and meetings so frigging serious? Why is everyone taking themselves so seriously? I mean, it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
it beggars belief. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
There is this notion in corporate life that if you are being funny or if you're using humor in business discussions, in a meeting or one-to-one conversation about business, you are not serious about your job. And
Mm,
that is, like you said, the most ridiculous notion that anybody could have. You have to be highly insecure as a person to believe that the other one, if he's cracking a joke or just laughing out, is somehow not serious about the situation you guys are in. In fact, it is the absolute reverse. I have learned in comedy, I've read about it, I've seen it happen on stage, that when people laugh, they are at their most vulnerable self. Right? It is the most basic emotion that you can have when you're like you can. I think Louis C.K., one of the very famous comedians, once said that you cannot be scared or feel fear if you're laughing. Try it. You know, try this thing that when you're laughing, you will not be scared. It's such a pure emotion which is out there, and people are at their absolute most vulnerable self in terms of receiving information or receiving any idea when they're laughing, when they're happy. That is why with friends and with families, most deep conversations really happen or changes happen in somebody's life. And a corporate world just doesn't recognize this. That if
mm,
you're in a meeting, even if you missed your quarter by a massive number, and sales are not doing well and business is going for a toss, you can still joke around and laugh and make everything normal, or at least worthy, where people are open enough to say things and share ideas, and they will receive ideas much more, ideas or instructions, whatever you want to give. They will receive them much more if they are actually happy, if they're laughing. I see this on stage. If I'm making a point on stage, I can see while people are laughing, the heads nod, and I know I have moved the needle a little bit on that topic. And it's very very real. It's very very there, right? It's not a feedback that I get later on. I can see it happening right then and there, and it's sad. When I came into comedy, one of the things I started doing was I started posting initially on LinkedIn, and I was trying to be funny, or I would write something funny on LinkedIn. I remember somebody, I don't know who that person was. Somebody wrote to me saying, "Hey, LinkedIn is not a forum for cracking jokes. You should do this on,
oh,
uh, you know, Instagram, Instagram or Twitter or whatever." I was like, "Whoa, my God, man!" I wanted to tell that person. I said, "It is over for you, buddy. Like, just like take a break. I don't know what. Do something in your life, man. Have a
you
drink."
need a drink. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you need. But people actually believe that. People believe that you shouldn't be funny, and it is so
Mm,
sad. Yeah. So if anybody in corporate life is listening, please, especially bosses and especially senior leaders and all, please make an environment where people are laughing. Crack a joke, say something silly. It is not so serious. Whatever all of us are doing on this planet, that you have to be serious and go up and I've seen CEOs, Atul, Suman. I've seen CEOs who and now that I do a lot of corporate shows, right? So, you would meet them before the corporate show and they're talking to you normally and they're chatting and they're laughing, because you're having a drink on the side. And then suddenly it's their time to do their keynote address. And they go up on stage and the whole bloody personality changes here. The guy's talking with a different tone. It is like very serious and very professional, as they call it. I don't know what they mean by it. And I'm like, oh dear Lord, you were connecting with me so well off the stage. You should be doing this on the stage. You will connect with them. Don't do this whole facade of trying to be serious or trying to be intelligent. Just be yourself, man. You will connect. That's the whole game in life. I spoke a little bit too passionately about it, but I am very passionate about people who don't laugh.
Okay, so let's talk about the actual transition, right?
Yeah.
Atul mentioned a lot of people are on the, you said you were on the cliff, and I think a lot of people are on the cliff. They want to do something.
Yeah.
You also mentioned that, when you now look back, it seems that you would not recommend other people doing that, right? But sometimes it has to be a bit of impulse, right? Because when you start thinking, like you yourself said, you could get into an overthinking mode, and you're never really able to take jump.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
The reason I say that I don't recommend other people to do this, what I did, which is absolutely no knowledge of what you're getting into, but you're getting into just out of sheer belief, is because I also know how lucky I was of, after I came into comedy. And the luck factor was, till that point, stand-up comedy wasn't big. There were hardly any comedy clubs in this country. There was one in Mumbai which used to do well, and otherwise people were performing in lounge bars, etc. And I jumped into this in 2000, eventually after my 45 days period in, the designation period. It was 2016 is when I started off, right? So first time I went up on stage or decided to go up on stage was around April time frame. And April is when a comedy club opened up in Cyber Hub, where I used to sit out of a coffee shop. And it just opened up right there. The same club that was in Mumbai. Pure luck, right? I was 2 months into comedy or 3 months into comedy when few comedians had their videos which went viral. And suddenly corporate India was like, hey, we should call these guys for these shows, let's not call musicians, let's call comedians. And suddenly corporate money started coming in. So you could do 2-3 shows in a month and make very good money out of it, right? Or whatever money, at least at that point of time. So I was lucky. I recognize all the moments, which was just pure luck of being at the right place at the right time, and which obviously helped things go the way they have gone. I hope it happens to everyone. But if it doesn't mean that you shouldn't jump with a very clear plan. You know what I mean? Like if there was a guy working in corporate life right now and say, hey, I want to become a comedian, I would tell him, I say, don't just jump into it, right? Just do this job in the day. You will always go on stage in the evening. So go do this for a few months. See if you really like it. Not the money part of it. See if you like it. See if you can make people laugh. Even if you're not making people laugh, are you feeling that this is the best thing that you can ever do in your life? If you're getting that feel, then go jump. Then go through the ups and downs and feel like you will.
But linking it back to what we spoke earlier, if he's doing this in the evening, next day his boss is going to call him and say, "Ye kya dekh raha ho? What are you doing?" Right? Just kidding.
वो किसी ना किसी को तो problem हो जाएगा. God forbid his boss is at a comedy show and this guy pops up and starts joking about his boss. It's career over in any case, which then means that he can get into comedy faster. But it's just there are multiple factors, Suman, that go into the following passion, making a career out of doing what you really want to do in life, right? One is knowing that it can go horribly wrong and accepting the fact that whatever lifestyle you're living at this point of time, whatever point of time you decide to jump, all of that could vanish. And it would not only put you at risk, it would put everyone in your family, your kids, your wife, whoever it is, at risk of losing this standard of living that you have. You need to accept it. While you're accepting that, you also need to believe that we live in a time when anybody can pick up any profession, and as long as they're serious about it and they're willing to work hard, they will eventually make money in it. I always quote this example
This is like that Shah Rukh Khan, Sara Kainat and all that stuff happening here, huh?
I'm not saying Kainat. I'm saying eventually it will happen. See, the thing is, let's take an example. Forget stand-up comedy. Think of a profession. where, like, think of a hobby that could turn into a profession. What would stop you from making money in it would be finding a mechanism to make money out of it, which will take time. You will get into it, you will learn how things are done, you will go talk about it with 20 other people, you will test the idea, you will fail a zillion times, and eventually, as long as you're at it, because now you have left everything, right? Now there is no going back, there's no giving up, and all those qualities need to be there. Need to be clear that I am in it, even if I go absolute broke. You will find some way, and the times are very different here. When we were growing up, these are not the opportunities. Doctor bano, engineer bano, CA bano, khatam कहानी तुम्हारा वही 3 4 5 चीजें करना होता है, या कॉर्पोरेट लाइफ में चले जाओ. हाँ, एमबीए कर लो, कॉर्पोरेट लाइफ में चले जाओ. बट यही होता था. हम जब पढ़ाई नहीं करते थे, हमारे पेरेंट्स बोलते थे कि पढ़ाई नहीं करोगे तो चाय की दुकान खोलोगे. अब किसी ने खोल दिया चाय पॉइंट, $multi-million फंडिंग मिलता है उन लोगों को. कोई तो बच्चा था ना जो उसने बोला, अरे चाय की दुकान, व्हाट अ ब्रिलियंट आइडिया, लेट मी ओपन दिस. Right? They made a business out of it. They were चाय की दुकान से पहले also. So
But Anshu, what you talked of luck, right? I think you're being very humble, because to me luck is
least of my qualities.
Comes from I think luck comes from the courage to show up, right? Like you described initially. You are getting into a field where it's completely new to you. You realize somebody 20 years your junior could still be better at stand-up just because that guy has done more shows than you have. It requires a lot of vulnerability and courage and humility to take that, right? And to be aware of that, right?
I humbly accept your point.
Isn't
because
it?
I think
So
that point is making me look much better than what I said. Humility भी आ गया मेरे बीच में. No, I think देखो, like I keep going back to this point of working hard, right? Because it's extremely important. One of the things that I really test out in people who talk to me about following passion is, are you doing this because the idea sounds very romantic to you? Are you doing this because, and it could be any passion, even if you wanted to do a startup, for example, right? But some people are in my startup life, I'm a co-founder, I'm a founder. This sounds so romantic. It'll be my life, my time. I can do whatever I want. ये सब नहीं होता है. Like, none of this happens. If you're doing this for the romance of the idea because everybody's talking about it and you hear it in 40 podcasts, please don't do it, right? You will fail 100%. The only way to do this is work hard. So when that club opened, in 2016, when that club opened right opposite the coffee shop I used to sit, the fact was I was sitting in that coffee shop and writing jokes. So the one chance that they gave me where I could have horribly failed, I at least made an impression good enough for them to say, "ठीक है, this guy has the capacity to learn, and we can give him the next chance to come on stage." And then the next became the next. But I was putting in the hours before that. So that hard work needs to go in. Like they say that luck can strike you, but you need to be ready for that luck. And I completely take that point, right? You please don't do this for like I tell comedians people who want to be stand-up comedians, I ask them, I say, why do you want to be a comedian? This is a बड़ा cool job लगता है, आप लोग ऐसे स्टेज पे सबको हटाते हैं. ऐसे मत कर. फिर अगर तेरे को ये cool लग रहा है ना कि ऐसे लोग आके सेल्फी ले रहे हैं, तेरे पे spotlight है and people cheer when you get up on stage, please don't do this. Okay? Because this will fade off this will not come to you if you're coming in with this thing, and even if it does, the ups and downs will be so much you won't be able to handle it. So you have to get into your passion for the right reasons, and the right reasons are something that you truly believe in, right? Something that you were meant to do and you've realized it. And second, your absolute belief that you will put in your heart and soul into it, everything that you've got, including the risk of losing everything, to be successful. I think eventually if you do those two things, you will make it. Some will make it faster, some will make it later, but you will make it big.
Anshu, that's something I did want to talk to you about, which is, and you've mentioned it 2 or 3 times, that things could go horribly wrong. You've now been out of a very good, remunerative, I would, for many people, fun job as well. You had a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said yourself, it was not that you were a disgruntled employee of sorts. You were enjoying your work in that sense. But how do you think you would have reacted if things had gone horribly wrong? If you would have found that comedy was not And I'm just hypothetically saying one thing could be that comedy would not have been as remunerative as it's turned out for you, broadly speaking,
Yeah.
or you could have found out that you were not as good at it as you thought you might be. Um, how do you
So
think you would have
two very
reacted
different
in
things
that?
actually. Yeah,
Huh,
two very different things.
two very different.
One is not yeah one is finding out that you're not good enough for it, which every single comedian on this planet has found out the day they go on stage the first time. For what you believe you are and what you are on stage, you are an absolute mess. So that has actually happened, and the only way to do this is keep going back on stage, keep working it out, be serious about the work. It is work, right? So you write for hours and hours together. I still even for 8 years I've been doing this every single day. I am in a
Yeah,
coffee shop at 9:15. I start writing at 9:30. I am working for 4 hours, which is just writing. Sometimes I'm writing crap, sometimes I'm just sitting with a pen and paper, but that process stays, right? And
the
things come
rigor
out
of
of
it.
it or whatever. So the process has to be there, right? So that is one thing. If it had gone horribly wrong, it almost did, I mean it technically did in a sense. The first time I met a comedian was Amit Tandon. And I remember the club had just opened up. The club I was talking about, it used to be called Canvas Laugh Club. And Amit was, I think the first day or the second day, Amit was coming to perform his show there. And he had been doing comedy for 5-6 years till then. So a friend told me that I know Amit Tandon, I can connect you to him. I called him up. I said, Amit, if you're coming there, I sit there. Can we just meet? I want to be a comedian. So he was very generous and very kind. He says, okay, fine. I'll come a little early. We'll sit and chat. So we were sitting and having coffee, and in fact, he refused coffee. He says, "Nahi, chai piyenge." So we were sitting and having chai, and initially the conversation was about how do I do this. So he was explaining to me ki process kya hota hai. At one point, when we became a little open, like after half an hour, 45 minutes, I asked him. I said, "If you don't mind telling me, how much will you make in this show that you're doing tonight at this club?" And he says, ₹5,000 banenge. And I was like, "Abbe yaar, 5,000." I said, if I do this 30 days in a month, that is 1,50,000. Like, इतना को तो कन्वेंस बिल देते थे हम लोग. That I so it hit me. It's very, I remember telling Monica, I came home, I was like, अबे यार मोनिका, इसमें पैसा तो बहुत कम है. But there was this thing, I don't know where that belief was. There was this thing that, hey, stand-up comedy has been around in the US for like since 1940s, 50s in the form that we do. And it is a huge business out there. Every single guy that you know, Jerry Seinfeld, etc., they were all stand-up comedians, right? And so there is this field. It is very nascent right now. Nobody's making money, but hey, maybe you can make a difference. Do comedy good enough for people to come and watch, and the only way to do this is go back to the process and work hard. So it was that, and the luck played factor, because in 3 months the whole industry changed in terms of money. So money started coming in, and they were making good money for every show, and I was like, okay, fine, lucky. If it had carried on too long, I would have been in it for too long, right? Then I would have told everybody in my house ki roti pyaz khao thode din. You know, I mean, I
Right.
wouldn't have quit. I wouldn't have gone back. If the whole industry had fallen apart, I would have figured out, hey, comedy, a mic in hand, and an audience, right? If this is the world and it cannot exist as stand-up comedy, I would have taken this, molded into some module, and given corporate guys some gyan and about how to use comedy in corporate life, or written a movie or written a book,
Sure,
right? Some
sure,
form of
sure.
art would have come in using comedy to reach out to a broader audience. But that would have for sure happened. I was very clear on day one, day two, in fact. I was not going back to corporate life. I told Monica, I came back from Starbucks doing nothing the entire day. This is second, third day, I think, or whatever, one of those first few days of after having left Microsoft. And I told Monica, I said, I did nothing the whole day. I sat in Starbucks and I just saw people come in and go. And I am not going back to corporate life. She was like, wow, okay, fine. So there was this thing, and that was very true.
That's very interesting you say that, because a lot of people, when we ask as to what, if things had gone wrong, hypothetical, many of them start out by thinking, if it doesn't, I'll give it 3 months, 6 months. After that, I'll get a job and go back, right?
Yeah, safety
Um,
nets.
yeah. Though a lot of people have said, I will not be able to go back, but that's having done maybe not one venture, couple of ventures. Now they're at a stage they don't want to go back because life is very different now. But you seem to suggest that
somehow,
from day
yeah,
one, you are very clear about that, right?
I know it sounds a little wacky and a little idealistic, if I may say so, but I truly believe that this whole safety net thing, na, I mean, it is a great thing to have as a backup if you have an idea you want to test out. But if you want to talk about following passion and this is my life, and this is the direction my life should change, and you use big words like passion and legacy and finding myself, those are way bigger than saying, hey, I'm going to test out this idea with a bunch of friends and see if it works out. मेरा job तो चल ही रहा है अभी और वहां खराब हो जाएगा तो I'll go back. All of those things, I believe it cannot be. The bigger things in life cannot be done like this. Like Virat Kohli wouldn't be Virat Kohli if he was also going to office in the morning. You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen like that. You got to give everything that you have. You got to feel the fear. You got to feel the fire. You got to feel the ups and downs to the extent that you are supposed to feel when you're following passion. And that is what people don't get. They get the romance part of it. They don't get this because it gets very lonely. It gets very scary. It is not consistent. It's not a monthly salary. There is no predictability. Like COVID happened. Imagine 2019, I had released about 4 videos on YouTube. 4 or 5 videos, and back to back, every single video hit 2 million, 3 million, and it was big numbers those times, right? And I was on the rise. Every time I was putting a show, getting sold out in like literally 3 days, 4 days. The next month's shows were getting sold out. It was just on the rise, and then COVID hit. Done, khatam, tuck, finished. Right, the whole industry went crashing down. And I mean, if I had this whole backup mentality, I would have said, yeah, let me make a few calls. मैं अतुल को ही फोन करता कि अतुल यार, let's do something together, give me a job or get me connected to somebody. Those kind of things. It would have been very easy to, easy तो नहीं होता job लेना, but something or the other. Instead of, I remember the first 7 days, 8 days of COVID when it became clear that it's a long-term thing. I remember the panic I was in. It was absolute raw fear. Imagine it is not even having an option in life anymore of what you can do, right? Because I was like 2 years, if people don't come to comedy shows, it's over. We had not figured out Zoom and none of those things, right? Yeah. But it was absolute fear. But the whole, again, the mentality was...
It wasn't clear at all how long it'll be. I mean, there was no clarity. It wasn't like...
it
was open-ended, right? Yeah.
Open-ended, and also if there was ever a profession which would get affected, it was a lot of people packed inside a room. You know? That was an absolute no-no. People could go out, have distance where I said, kuch kaam waam to kar hi sakte ho tum, right? But bring 500 people into a room was a possibility that was like going out of the window very quickly. And my only thing was...
I must say one thing. I mean, you mentioned passion, purpose are big words, but I think the word which is even bigger is wife. And the fact that your wife supported you and said, just follow your passion. That goes a long way. That made sure you were not in that overthinking mode, right? And I think it's very important.
One, by saying this, you have earned brownie points.
Correct.
And now both Atul's wife and my wife will be like, देखो, this is the mentality you should have. Talk about how great
wives are. 1 घंटे से बात कर रहे हो, तुमने एक बार भी wife नहीं बोला. उसने 1 सेकंड बोल दिया.
Wife नहीं बोला और देखो, they could have been lost in opportunity. But you're right, Suman. It is extremely, extremely important for people around you to support. And when I say people around you, I don't mean friends and colleagues and stuff like that, because they will vanish very quickly from your life, which is a reality. But the people that you live with, right? Your wife, your husband, your kids, your parents, those are the people who need to believe. Even if they don't believe, they need to support you. That, this guy is in it, let him do it. And we'll give him the environment that we can give. Like in my household, the environment was given to me to do my thing. And when I say environment, there were simple things like, basic घर का काम जो होता था ना, कभी कोई bill देना है, कभी कुछ करना है, ये करना है, जो भी, like generally running the house kind of thing. And suddenly my wife started taking all those responsibilities on her own. I'm not talking the money part, the actual doing it part also. She was like, tum jao. Even if I was doing nothing in the coffee shop, she was like, you just focus on getting this right. Everything else we'll take care of. And I think that is, you need to have that support. I was so lucky and blessed. And I'm now trying to earn brownie points to have a wife like this who is the most beautiful person in this world. She's not
Phenomenal.
listening yet. But you need support.
Though for your son, it might have meant not getting free Xbox
My
games
son,
anymore.
yeah, my son was in 10th. His actually very true. His only objection to this entire scenario was, what about Xbox games? And I told him, I said, beta, to get Xbox games, you don't need to work in Xbox. Other parents also get Xbox games. And he was like, other parents earn also. Aapka lag nahi raha hai. So yeah, but you were very supportive. Yeah, all of them were very, very supportive. It amazes me now. Now when I think of it, none of it makes sense. It sounds like some movie where a very amateur writer has written that part of a transition, saying, "Arey, it's a happy world. Everything happy happens." It almost sounds like that. But it is important. Like I said, one of the things that if anybody is listening and planning to follow their passion and quit their job, you have to understand people leave you very, very quickly. Very, very. I saw people vanish from my life like this. Yeah. Like first couple of weeks, they were all messaging and, hey, how's it going? Big decision, awesome stuff, man. What, you've got balls to do this. All of that was happening. And suddenly they had no work from me. I was not in some big organization that could help them get business or get them the next job or get them connected to some senior folk somewhere else. And they all vanished here. All of them, one by one, tak, 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 karke vanish. And then it becomes a very lonely part of, and I'm talking largely about arts. If you're doing a startup with a bunch of
that
people,
must have
then
been tough.
obviously that is difficult. But yeah, people leave you very quickly. Yeah. Then you're irrelevant to them till you become famous again.
That's interesting. That's the emotional part that you have to kind of deal with or be prepared for to some extent. That becomes important.
And it hits very hard, yeah. Yeah, and it hits very hard. Atul. These are things now which they don't talk about in movies like Tamasha. I mean, they do, I think, thoda bahut to kiya tha. But when it happens to you, especially if you've been in this environment where you have friends and colleagues and, har thode din ke baad tum drink karne ja rahe ho sabke saath and people are calling you and you're getting messages and 500 emails a day. And then the only email you get is from, whatever, some yatra.com saying they have some discounts because nobody else is writing to you, right? That thing, this whole fear all the time that this could go horribly wrong, the thing that you want to reach out to people, but then your ego comes into play, small little, these little daily hurdles. And one phone call will make you very happy because you think, "Arey, isse kuch hone wala hai," and then suddenly within the next 2 hours, you're like, yahan pe kuch nahi ho raha mera, I'm just a lonely guy doing this. That up and down is not about just being a strong person. I believe everybody is a strong human being. People who work in corporate life, very strong people. Yeah, to do this, to travel, to commute daily and work the way they work and sit in meetings, you need to be a strong person to run businesses. According.
So you mentioned when you first started, you had this intense fear. How long was it before you were financially secure? You're not scared, and how does that time frame compare to what you were expecting it to be when you started?
So I think the fear never leaves you. Right? Fear just becomes,
Okay.
Now it is not about fear. Actually, it is about now being secure and having a plan to make it as consistent as you possibly can, right? So in comedy, for example, at this stage, I make money out of either public shows or corporate shows, right? Pure stand-up comedy, not the influencer part of working brands and all. But I make money like this. I know there's money coming in, and as long as I continue to create good content, this stream will only expand, right? Broader audience, more people coming in. In my head now, I'm like, okay, this is secure to a certain extent. What else can I do? And the beauty of at least our world is I can do anything I want. I can write a movie, I can write a web series, I can write a book, I can start a podcast, and then try to monetize those. So now I've started thinking, hey, increase the portfolio.
Yeah.
Because now I have a brand, at least I have some fans, I can bring them in. If I start a podcast, I'll start from a base of people who already want to listen. It is easier for me to reach out to an Amazon or Netflix with a movie idea or a web series idea. At least there are some connects that can happen. So it is about making it as secure as you can. Is there still absolute security? Zilch, at least in my business. Zilch. It can all vanish in a second. And then what is like all of this, right? All this fame and all, suddenly I could say one wrong thing on stage and I get cancelled, although nobody gets cancelled really now. But anything could go wrong, right? People could just start hating me for whatever reason. They don't want to listen to me. And my value and worth is gone in the entertainment business. But then I would write a book. I guess I would, right? I would still do something around this because I now know the model of how to achieve it. तो एक तो वो रहता है वहां पे थोड़ा बहुत कि फियर तो आएगा. फियर इज गुड. फियर होना चाहिए. फियर नहीं होगा ना. यू डोंट हैव फियर व्हेन यू हैव अ बैकअप जॉब आल्सो. You know, when you're doing this on the side now, then there is no fear. वो आग ही नहीं है किसी में. Have you seen this movie called 12th Fail?
No, I've heard of it.
It is about that kid from a tier 2, tier 3 town who wants to get into UPSC, right? It's that movie. I told my son to watch it. And I told my son, I gave him only one message. I said, watch it and be very scared. And he was like, why do I need to be scared? I'm not preparing for UPSC. I said, no, not about the UPSC part. Be very scared looking at the absolute raw fire that these people have who are coming from tier 2, tier 3 towns and wanting to make it big in life. Because they will meet you at some point and you will compete. Okay. And if you don't have that fire now, you will lose out very quickly. So fear is good. You need to have fear. You should be fearful. That सब कुछ लूट जाएगा, बर्बाद हो जाएगा. But then be smart enough to say कहाँ पे पैसा बनता है. When I came into comedy, for example, right, I very quickly realized कि मेरे से टिकट नहीं बिकेगा. Okay, because I'm just into it, right? Who would come and pay $500 to watch me? I was not even famous. I had no videos out, nothing at all. I was like, but I know corporate. If they want a comedian, it will be easier for them to call me. कि अरे ये तो अपना ही बंदा है. Right? He knows corporate world. He will not say something silly on stage. He will not say the wrong things on stage. So I made it a very clear focus saying that I will not use cuss words on stage or anywhere. I will not use bad language. I will not talk about sex. I will not talk about these things. I will do absolute clean comedy so that when a corporate looks at me, they said, he's a safe comedian to bring. So I started getting corporate shows. So you need to be a little smart about how you do the business part of it. Have fear, yeah. Please, for God's sake, have fear. Lot of these interviews about people who are in social, like public life now, you hear them constantly say this thing. I have failed a lot. I have failed a lot. I have failed a lot. Earlier now, when I used to hear this, now I was like, यार तू ऐसा drama hero बनने के लिए बोल रहा है, ठीक है? कि I'm this guy who understands both sides and all. Now I realize, yeah, the amount of failures I have had. Or for that matter, every single comedian who's in professional capacity right now doing comedy, you have no idea how many times we have failed. How many times we have stood in front of audiences where there is nobody laughing. How many times we've gone into shows where 3 people are sitting and we've just trying to do comedy to 3 people in the room and they walk out. And you're just standing there with nobody in the room except for 2 comedians at the back. And you're like, yeah, might as well finish the set, and you still finish your joke. That grind, that absolute humiliation, all of that only happens because I had a blank paper and a blank permission to say, go do it.
It's interesting when you talked about this failing thing. I'm reminded of this cartoon thing of where they show a surfer, right? Surfing the waves. And they're saying for a surfer, the fellow is constantly falling, right? Yeah. Maybe after every 5 falls, he gets up once, but that is exhilarating. So for him, success and failure are intertwined, right? So
yeah.
And he's not failing, he's falling, right? But every time he's falling, he's getting up and doing it again. And it almost sounds like that, right?
Yeah.
Even now, when you go for a show, it might might bomb, or it might
we still have shows like that. Yeah, we still have shows like this. I was once. I'll give you a story.
So it's a framing thing.
Yeah,
it's a framing thing. So if you don't frame it as a failing, but just as a falling, right?
Yeah.
Then you're ready to get up and do it again.
These places where you go test material, comedians go, right? It's called open mics, or you will go them in multi-comedian lineups. You go test material. So very, very, very early, I was speaking to somebody and they said you should go and test your material out on open mics. So I went to a couple of open mics. It was not my kind of crowd which was sitting there. I used to do a different kind of material which was more for 30s and 40-year-olds. There were some 18-year-old kids sitting there, and I felt, I was like, ye to kuch nahi hai, like this. I bombed horribly, and I was like, this is bad for my ego, bad. This material is not for them, it is for somebody else. I'm testing it with them, doesn't make sense, bachchon wali cheezein I was thinking. And I was obviously feeling bad about it. So I met a comedian there. I said, yeah, I'm feeling horrible. Yeah, I bombed for like 20 minutes on stage, or not even 20, it was just 10 or 15 minutes. I said, not a single smile from the audience here. So he says, why did you come here? So I was like, to test material. So he was like, did you test? So I said, yeah, it didn't work. He says, so test successful. Right? He says, now your test is successful. Now go back, make the joke better, write better, then come back. And if the joke doesn't work, try a different way of delivering it. Say it in a different tone. This is what you do in testing material. This is the gym where you work. This is not a place where you come for laughs. This is a place where you come to get better so that you can deliver laughs later. Right? That is the whole idea. The idea of failing is that. The idea of failing is that. Why are you failing? Because I know that is the only path to getting better at what I do. That is why I'm failing. I'm not failing because I love failure.
And we keep talking about this why question. This goes to the heart of purpose, right? Why are you even here?
Yeah.
And I think that answers the question.
Yeah. Yesterday, I was before we started recording, I was just telling Atul the story. Yesterday, I'm writing new stuff, so I'm in Gurgaon. I had to go to Delhi, and I left Gurgaon at 5:20 in the evening. I reached Delhi at 7:40. At a place which is hardly 15 kilometers from here. At 7:40 to do like literally 10 minutes of new material in front of 4 people who had turned up at the open mic, and I am so clear right now that the reason I was going was because I had to say those words out in a particular fashion. I'd gone to test something out, and wo 4 बैठे थे, I tested out, it didn't work. I came back today morning, I rewrote some of those things. I'll go tonight again somewhere to test, and that is being the whole idea of failure. If मेरे को लगता कि यार नहीं, जब तक परफेक्ट जोक नहीं बनेगा ना, मैं किसी के सामने नहीं जाऊंगा, तो कभी बनेगा भी नहीं वो.
But on the flip side, we were talking about the emotional side of failure, and I remember us talking about this, and you told us that how you when a particular set has not worked, you like to get on stage as quickly as possible soon after. So tell us about that, because I found that and that there are learnings in there for everyday life. When you're doing something new, when you're an entrepreneur, that handling that emotion of ups and downs, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So let me tell you a story. What happened? This is, again, I was probably 5-6 months into comedy business at that point in time. There was a person who used to work at Microsoft, had left Microsoft to join some other organization. That organization in Gurgaon, in Leela Palace, were doing one of these IT conferences, the big IT conferences. Okay. So she called me up and she told me, she says, hey, I'm doing this big conference. It's a 3-day conference. At the end, 3rd day, after the conference is over, I want you to come and do stand-up comedy, and obviously we'll pay you money. And I was like, this is awesome, yeah, perfect. And she said, you will be the surprise act. I was like, this is brilliant. I am in. There's money coming in. So she gave me whatever I asked for. I was super happy. Okay. So I reached that day. So this conference or whatever was supposed to get over at 5:30, and my show was at 5:30, and I had to speak for 45 minutes on stage, or do comedy for 45 minutes. So I reached there at about 4:45, 4:30. I reached there. And I had no experience of how to prepare the environment for a corporate show. Okay, I had no experience. So I went in, there were 300, 400 people seated with black suits and ties and stuff like that, very formal stuff. There was some panel discussion going on where they were discussing how IT will change the world. And I walked in, and whoever the organizer, some person told me that after this panel discussion is when you would go up on stage. I was like, perfect, everybody's seated, environment is there, right? They will finish, I'll go on stage. I didn't even tell them what introduction to give. I didn't ask them if there's a break or whatever, nothing. Okay. None of those things, as we call them tech riders now, none of that. The panel discussion got over. These 4 people were getting off the stage, and this MC comes on stage and she said, ladies and gentlemen, before we end, let's welcome on stage Anshu Mor. This is the introduction. Now, I have to remind you, I was 5-6 months into comedy. Nobody knew I was a stand-up comedian. Nobody, not even my neighbors. Okay. So, and just this Anshu Mor. So even then, I did not have the intelligence to say, she has not told these people that I'm a comedian. They have no idea. It's not written in the agenda. I'm a surprise act. Right? I should set the base. Nothing. I went up on stage and I had just started the first line of a joke. No introduction, nothing. A joke. First line. My friend was sitting in the front row. She obviously is one of the top leaders there. Okay. She said, Anshu, wait, loudly. Okay. So I stopped. She says, before you start, I want to say something. And she came up on stage and she took my mic, which I would now not give to anybody, even if they were holding a gun. Okay. So I happily gave my mic to her. And she says, guys, whatever, ladies and gentlemen, I used to work with Anshu, when back then he was in sales and he was a brilliant sales guy and he was doing all of this. Then I quit Microsoft, and a few months back, I was on Facebook. I saw this guy has become a comedian. This is the exact tone. He has quit everything and become a comedian. So today he will tell us why.
What?
And she walked off the stage. And I still didn't have the intelligence at that point of time to manage that why part of it first and then get into jokes. So then I started my jokes. So I was like, thank you, so and so. And then I started doing husband-wife jokes to 300, 400 people who had no idea stand-up comedy was about to happen. Right? I had 20 minutes of the most ego-crushing, soul-crushing experience where not even a single person moved, like their smile a little bit also. Forget the laughs. Nothing happened. And then the act of shame was that the stage was here. The audience was sitting, right? Aise karke samne. And the main gate, exit, was on the other end of the stage. So when the show got over, I said, thank you, everybody. And everybody knew it is all over. Everybody got up. I had to walk through them to exit. And sometimes people are embarrassed on your behalf. So that eye contact would happen and they would turn away because they didn't want to make eye contact with you. I walked out of...
Oh my God.
It was that bad, okay? And I literally had my head down. I was walking out. And for some reason, the first thought in my head was, I need to get back on stage. And I remember I called up these guys at the Canvas Laugh Club, which was in Gurgaon only. I called them up. I was like, and I had no stature at that point of time to demand spots and slots. I was just 6 months into comedy, but I said, hey, listen, I have a request. I have just bombed at a show. I need to be on stage. I don't know who all are performing. Please just give me 5 minutes if you have to. I just need to go back on stage. And they were grateful enough. They said, okay, come do 7 minutes. I went up on stage, did 7 minutes, killed. People laughed. I got off, then went to a bar, took a drink and said, now this makes sense. Now this is okay. Because the only thing that could help me get over that piece was getting back on stage. Because that is where it will become okay. It will not become okay in some therapy session later.
That's a lovely story, Anshu.
Yeah. That really is, yeah.
To be doing this job of getting in front of rank strangers every night and trying to make them laugh. Something is horribly wrong with us mentally. But I think the thing about comedy and the thing that has taught something to me in real life also is it's being real to yourself. You need to follow passion. You need to do something. You need to do a startup. Be real to yourself first. Don't dream. I mean, dream big things. I say, "Main ye karega, I'll get awards. I'll do this. I'll do that." Believe in all that because those are drivers. But at the same time, on a daily basis, be real. I'm not good enough. I need to do this again and again. I will fail. I will go back. I will go through the grind. People will leave me. I will have no money. It will come. But I need to be clear with who I am and what I'm trying to do. Comedy has taught me that, of being very real. Because as comedians, the only thing we can do on a topic is be real. Peel the layers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great advice, man.
I must mention at this point that when I first heard you coming on the show, I was very excited because I keep saying and keep telling people that I think it's the toughest job on the planet to get on stage and make people laugh, right? Because you need to read the room, you read the pulse, there's so much, and you need to think on your feet. There's a lot to process.
Now I'm feeling so good, yeah. हाँ है तो
हाँ है तो सही, बड़ा मुश्किल है, बट देखो किसी को तो करना है, तो मैंने ले लिया है रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी।
So Anshu, as is inevitable, some of the people, a lot of the people listening in, are keen on how the transition works, what should they do, what should they not do. So from your perspective, from your experience, what's the kind of thing, you would do exactly the same, and what would you do differently, before, during, after, whatever?
I'll take the differently part first.
Sure.
I think a lot of things that I've said during this podcast is things that I've learned over time. It was not something that I came in with, right? So one of the things I would do differently would be to put myself out there with ideas and content more than I did. And by that I mean, there was a point in my first year where I thought I should have a talk show. And then I said, नहीं यार इसमें बहुत पैसा लगता है to do a video recording and all. अभी monetize नहीं होगा, तो I should just do an audio podcast. फिर मैंने को किसी ने बोला कि हम फोन पे भी रिकॉर्डिंग करके डाल सकते हैं. I was like, नहीं अच्छा नहीं लगेगा, तो वो फील नहीं आएगा फोन रिकॉर्डिंग में at that time. And I didn't do it. I should have done it. I should have just put it out there. I had an idea of a web series 5 years ago, which I didn't write saying यार अभी टाइम नहीं है, maybe बाद में करूंगा. I should have done that and failed. And possibly sent it out and people would have given me feedback. Just putting the ego part of it, I think, is what I would contain a lot. And by ego, I don't mean this, hey, I'm a star, or I'm becoming a star or whatever thing. The ego that I shouldn't get hurt by. So I need perfection in everything. Like my personal goals, right? I need to make the content to a certain perfect level before I put it out for audiences. Right? And it doesn't work. Nobody cares. We give too much importance to ourselves saying that, "Arey, kuch better hoga to karenge." Like this podcast, for example, right? We've had this conversation offline that it obviously would be much better if we were doing this sitting together. But the right thing that you guys are doing is, hey, we can't sit together because you guys are in different cities, but we're still doing it anyways. We're putting it out there. So now you're building an audience for yourself. You're also learning through the process of multiple things, and it will just keep getting better. Right? You didn't wait for that moment where you should do. So there were certain things in terms of, and they were mostly non-stand-up ideas where I felt I overthought on that entire concept of perfection. You don't need to be perfect. Nobody cares. Just go out there and put myself.
But it's interesting you're saying that, because earlier you had put yourself out there. What you're saying is while you were vulnerable in stand-up,
Yeah.
but you're saying you should have been even more vulnerable is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Just everything out there. The stand-up, I know the process. Stand-up is about, I know the failure, everything that I've said before, right? Yeah, I'm going out there, I'm being vulnerable, I'm failing, I know that's the only way to do this. There's no other way except to go on stage and test material out. So you're putting yourself out there. It is the other part of your brand, the life that you're building up, the portfolio. Like I would think 10 times before putting up a tweet or putting up an Instagram reel. I would be like, no, I'll sound silly. Or at my age, maybe this will look too much if I'm saying this or doing this. Or my friends would be watching, unko lagega kya aise kyun dance kar raha hai? Ye sab mat kar. And I have now realized it just doesn't matter. I should have tested out 100 things that I would have put out. Maybe 3 of them would have worked. I would have had 3 more things in my portfolio. So that idea, I think, I keep telling even now that, it's not that I solved it. Even now, I keep telling. I started writing a blog. So I started writing a book first. And I realized that writing a book is very tough, much tougher than writing comedy. And I was like, I'm not sounding deep enough. I'm not using those fancy words. I'm just saying it as, I'm writing it as I say it, which is very regular language. So मेरे को एक point पे लगा था कि नहीं यार, maybe my writing is not good enough. So then I decided, I said, let me test out. I'll put out some blogs. So I write these blogs on Substack. Nonsensical blogs, right? They are about everything and anything. Someday I'll be writing about potholes. Some days I'll be writing about trolls. पता नहीं जो भी मन में आता है, I write it every week, one blog. I know it's shitty. I know it's not great writing. I just have 600 people who read that blog. That's it. That's the audience I have for those blogs. But I'm now putting it out there. I'm saying, you keep putting. Because sometimes somebody sends a message saying, hey, this, what you said now was really nice. And then you know, okay, that's the pulse. When I say something like this, or if I give perspective on a certain topic, they like it. So you start understanding the audiences better. That makes the writing better. I'm hoping that will make the book better. But, the idea was put out there and fail on the blog dramatically. So please like, share, subscribe on the blog. It's on Substack. So
No, definitely. I'm sure it'll be great reading, especially if it's
No, it
very.
is not.
No, in the sense that especially if it's real, right? What you're trying to be is real. Now, one is not expecting Chetan Bhagat level writing. See the joke there. So
I was about to make a quip, then I was like, nah, hold your horses on.
इतना बुरा भी नहीं है. So but still, I mean, it'll be real. That's what matters, right?
Just throw them out there. Don't take yourself too seriously. Nobody's bothered about you or your content or when you're going to put out that video. Nothing. They're not bothered about your startup. They're not bothered about your success. They're too busy with their own life. So just go out there, put it. They'll forget if you failed in 2 days.
I came across a very nice term describing this. It's called cosmic insignificance therapy.
Oh, wow.
So essentially what it means, if you look at it from the cosmic angle, what you do nobody gives a shit about it anyway.
Yeah. The
But they put a nice
model.
word to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's a framework.
Yeah, the CIG framework. Then there'll be 10 meetings to discuss who will manage this framework from here on and who will review it every week.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, no, you can't use it because it's not been tested by minimum number of people. It's not proven yet, so you can't use it.
Yeah.
Please
And it's not in the KRA sheet for appraisal, so in any case, it doesn't matter if you can't measure it. Oh yeah, cosmic khatam wahi pe.
Okay, so all this is what you would have done differently. What about what you would have done the same?
The process. I'm very proud of it. Yeah. I'm genuinely very proud of it. It's not that I've become the greatest comedian, in the country, but I'm very, very, very proud of the fact that irrespective of what is happening in my life, I land at a coffee shop at 9 o'clock in the morning. I've been doing this for 8 years. I land with a pen and paper and a laptop and I say, I'm going to write something. And it will be 1 in 50 days where anything worth saying on stage comes out. But those 50 days of writing crap is what I'm very, very proud of. The process is something that it's so important. This could be, especially now, earlier, there was fear कि ये नहीं करोगे तो काम नहीं मिलेगा. अब तुम्हें पता है कि काम मिल रहा है. अब it is easy to give up. I can get up aram se at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, have a beer, sleep again, then wake up in the evening, go for a show. I can do this and, write once in a while karke. But I don't know where I must have read it. This didn't come from inside me. I wasn't like that when I was in corporate life, so structured. But I read it somewhere. I think there was some great writer, English, British writer, whatever. He was asked a question once, and I'm talking about one of the greats. I'm forgetting the name. He was asked a question. He says, do you write when inspiration strikes you? Or do you write when you have to write? Right? So he says, I write only when inspiration strikes me. And inspiration strikes me every day at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Well said.
Yeah, and he says, that's what he was saying. He says, every day I sit. So some days that inspiration strikes, but it happens to be at the same time at 9 o'clock in the morning.
That is really something.
Process is,
That's,
yeah.
So you're on the
Process.
same path to this great person, basically.
I'm hoping है वो book नहीं लिखा जा रहा मुझसे बस but I'm hoping
But
that
you've
yeah.
taken the first few steps. I mean, if you get onto a blog, writing, it'll flow, it'll happen. I mean,
Yeah, it'll happen for sure. It'll happen for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no advice to give. Everybody's journey will be different. Just
That is advice.
just do it. Just find the right reason to do whatever you're doing. Don't do it because the world is doing it. Don't do it because
So, let me
sounds
ask
fancy.
it properly and answer it properly. So Anshu,
Okay,
just
since
to
you're
wrap-
getting into the proper bit, I just want to make one point. See, again, I'm going back to the why question. Why are people watching our show? Because they're all sitting on the stand, sitting on the fence, and you want them to nudge to take that jump. It shouldn't happen after watching the show. They actually go 2 steps back, right? Saying that
if they do, they were never meant to do this. That's my point.
Awesome.
They were never meant to do this. It was not the right time for them to be doing this. I think the only fundamental question in terms of, forget the advice part of it, but I think truly the fundamental question that you have to ask yourself before you get into something that is totally out of whack, passion, whatever, different stream, different job, different whatever is, what are you willing to lose? And if the answer is not everything, then think a lot. Because sometimes the answer to that could be, yeah, I'm okay if 1 or 2 years we don't make so much of money. Wrong answer. Don't do it. Right? If the answer is, I'm okay that, I will not have time for my family anymore. Wrong answer. Don't do it. Right? If the answer is, I'm willing to lose everything that I have built, I am willing to get onto the street and I will still be doing it or still be trying to do this, then you are in it. Then you will succeed.
That's
then
a very
you should
high
jump.
bar. It's a very high bar.
Yeah, then you should jump. Jump. That's when you jump. It is not the regular things. It is not EMIs. It is not secure income. It is not can I afford international vacations after this? No, it is way, way bigger, way bigger, way brighter. Somehow you find that magic. Now you will know when you find that magic. So don't even force yourself into, "Arey, aaj main 2 घंटे बैठ के magic find करेगा." नहीं होगा. You will realize one day. Even if you don't, it's okay. But if you do it, you're blessed.
If this was a musical performance, then we can end on that very high note. I think that's a really, really good place to end. Anshu, thanks so much for your time and sharing so openly. And, we talked about this earlier, that being a stand-up comedian, it's very important to be vulnerable, to be honest, to be transparent, to be yourself and real on stage. And this performance has shown a lot of vulnerability. And thank you so much for being so open with us and through us with the audience. We really do appreciate that.
Hey, thank you so much for inviting me over here. I have to tell you, this format is brilliant. I think you two complement each other fantastically. And I'm saying this, being part of the industry and knowing how podcast, etc. work. I think you guys make a great team. And
That's
the
very
best part
kind of
was
you.
it was just a free-flowing conversation. That's the best part. Nothing, no set questions, no set answers. I think that's what makes it real. Yeah. So thank you so much. This was great, great fun for me to do this.
Great. Thank you so much, Anshu. And it was free flowing. And I think, it's almost ironical that you're talking to a stand-up comedian and one of the most deep, profound conversations we've had in a while. Yeah, so thanks for that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. Thank
And
you
you
so
didn't even
much.
stand up once.
ये बहुत घटिया वाला था, इसको हटा देना.
Yeah.
This